Hey, good morning or good evening or wherever you are, whatever it is where you are. Uh, I'm going to be tying a fly tonight. It's going to be a pretty simple fly. This fly is called a stimulator. So the idea, generally, when you're fly fishing, you're throwing out a fly that has been tied to look exactly like the things that the fish are eating at that moment. Um, but sometimes you don't have that kind of fly in your box. And if you carry some of these types of flies, then you can throw something out there that will stimulate them to bite, to eat. No jokes about biting and stimulating, Andy. I see you watching me. Um, so, anyway, let's keep it clean here. I'll turn this around. So, normally, okay, I got a couple of hooks here. So, normally I tie with a hook like this. This is a shut up, Andy. This is a bait holder hook from Walmart. It's an eagle claw. It comes in a pack like this. There's 3 different sizes. I show this on almost all my videos because I use those hooks all the time. You can see that it's a pretty heavy hook as far as the wire goes. You have the bait holder barbs on the top, and then you have your regular barb on the hook for holding the fish, and these are bent in a curve so that if they slide out of the fish's mouth, the point will still catch. And then you can see also the eye of the hook is flat, so that when you tie it, it comes straight off. But the one that I'm going to use today, this is off. I don't know what size this is, but this is an actual fly tying hook. It's meant for fly tying. You see a little bit of difference there for one thing, in the shape. So this is the old guy, the bait holder, versus the new one that I'm going to use. It's actually not new. I took it off of an old fly that I don't use anymore. I cut all the stuff off of it so I could reuse the hook. So this one still has a barb, but I've pressed it down so it's flat. That makes it easier to take out. If you're catching trout, trout are not necessarily as hardy a fish as something like a bass. So if you handle them too much, or if it takes too much time, if you fight them too long, they can get stressed and they can die from it. So they're not as hardy as warmer water fish. And also you see the eye of the hook is turned down. That is done basically to help with the presentation of the bug itself that you're tying, so that it maybe looks like, maybe gives it more of a curved look once you tie the fly or whatever. So there's different kinds of hooks that have, some of them have the eye turned up, some of them have an eye that is like a 90-degree angle, and then it comes out at an angle. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff there. There's also different weights of wire, but you can see it's slightly thinner than this one, and there are thinner ones than this for different uses. So a stimulator hook, a stimulator fly, the one that I'm going to tie looks like this, except I've used obviously a bigger hook. Well, maybe it's not obvious. There, that's obvious. But this is what it's going to look like. And basically, all the stuff you need is some kind of a hackle. In this case, I've got a grizzly hackle. That's what makes the stripes. It means it's grizzly. And I've ripped off the barbs on one side of the hook there. And then I'm going to use this blaze orange thread and black thread. And I've got my scissors. I've got a hackle plier. This, when you squeeze it, it pinches the end of the feather so you can handle it more easily. And that's all I'm using. And then, of course, fingernail polish for gluing the head so it doesn't come untied. And so I'm going to take my hook for tying flies. I'll put my champagne cork over there. I'll go ahead and tie this fly real quick. Let me zoom in a little bit and get back where we were supposed to be here. What did I do? I can't focus this business. There we go. That's better. Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to clamp this down so it's tight, so it rings when you flick it. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my orange. All right. So basically all I'm going to do is try to build up this body a little bit just by laying some thread down. This is not as important. The more thread you put on here, the heavier it'll get. And this fly is actually meant to sit on top of the water. And there are several versions of this. My whole point here is just to pick 2 colors and a feather and tie the fly. I'm not worried about the size of the hook. Basically what you do with that is when you pick your hackle compared to your hook, you get it so that the barbs are the length you want them once they bend in comparison to the size of the hook. So it's all about preference. Some recipes of flies will call for certain sizes of feathers or certain sizes or shapes of hooks. And if I was tying those flies, I would want to, pick out those specific things that are tried and true. In this case, I know that this works because I've tied these before, or flies like this. Especially if you're in Texas and you're fishing for panfish anywhere in a river or creek or pond or anything like that, you're going to catch fish on a hook like this, on a fly like this. If there's bream or red-breasted sunfish, bluegill. If you're in San Marcos, Texas, you'll catch a stringer full in about 20 minutes. You won't have any trouble. And you can definitely utilize a fly like this to do that. So I've got my orange thread covering the whole hook. Might even go a little bit further back than this, a little bit off the bend, some, not too much. Right there. Okay. I'm going to take this. So like I said, I've already pulled the barbs off of one side of the feather, and the reason for that is when it lays over the hook, I don't want those other barbs to be under the shaft of the feather. I just want them to be sticking off of the fly. Otherwise, you can do that and you can make it be really, really fluffy with all the barbs sticking up, but you can also end up making a mess and tying things down, and you end up kind of with less barbs sticking up if you don't do it just right. So for this demonstration, I'm just doing this way. So I'm going to take this and I just lay it to the side of the hook a little bit until I can grab it and bind it down. And I'm just going to take this to the front of the hook. I'm going to make sure I cover that feather where I've tied it down, cover it really well so you can't see it. I'm just going to go back and forth over this until it's all tied down and keep these extra barbs out of the way. So it's all orange all the way down. And this is a very thin thread, so it takes several turns. There are different kinds of thread. There are threads that are meant for big flies, and it actually says big fly on it. Let's see, we've got one here. Yeah, like this one right here is meant for big flies, and it's a very heavy, it almost has the consistency of like dental floss. So it doesn't take very many turns with that one to cover the hook and be a very bulky fly. But this one is a very thin thread, and so it takes more turns. Now, what I want to do here, I want the head of this to be black. So I'm going to use my other bobber, and I'm going to tie this in like it's a feather. I'm going to lay it on the hook. Come back a couple of turns here. I'm going to lay it on the hook, just the thread. You see it laying there. I'm going to tie it on just like it's a feather. Do a couple of turns so it's bound down really well. And then I'm actually going to switch this, and I'm going to tie down the black one with the orange. And then one more time I'll switch it. Now that I've got that tied down, I can cut the orange off. There. And now I'm done with my orange thread. I'll move it over to the side. Now I'm going to go ahead and make sure I've got a good bite on this black thread here. Take some turns so that the orange is totally gone on this head. As much as I want to build the head up, okay? And then, hey Mike, how's fishing going on your vacation? Missing you at the store quite a bit, dude. Been crazy over there. Alright, so I'm going to take this now and just wrap it forward. And this one is not using any wires or anything because I don't want it to be heavy. This one, you might catch 30 fish on it and it keeps going. You might catch 2 fish and it keeps going, or whatever. So it just depends on how you're fishing and how the fish are biting. But again, with things like panfish, you could catch a lot of fish on a hook like this, on a fly. So I'm just going to wrap this around and keep wrapping it, and try to make these spaces even as I go down, all the way down the hook. And then if I have any left over at the head, once I get to the very end, I'm just going to take a couple of extra turns and have it a little bit heavier at the front. Now, one thing you can do with these, you can actually tie these with a darker feather. Let me get this tied off before I start yapping. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to hold my thread back so I don't cut it off. I'm going to come in here and cut the stump of this feather off as close to the hook as I can without cutting my thread. There. And as long as you have a good bite on that thread, on that feather, it'll hold tight. And pull these back. And make sure I bind down that that stump of the feather down there underneath. Or I can just build up the head around it, make it a fatter head. That's probably what I'll do. It'll be easier than trying to cut off that close to the fly. Okay. So there's more of an angle on it there. So what I was saying was you can tie these darker towards a darker feather, and then you can change the feather to have a white one on the front. And that way when it's floating in the water, you can see it better. It's called bivisible, where it's made of 2 different colors. It just makes it pop. You can do something like a wing in there, or you can have some white bucktail sticking out the back, or wherever you want to tie it in, or change the color of the feather. This other feather that I used on this other version of the fly, it's actually a different feather. This one is, as you can see from the front, it's black along the shaft of the feather, but these barbs change from black to white as they go out. So when you wrap it, you see the black lines inside against the orange, but the outer part is the white part of the feather. I think this feather actually used to be on another fly with green feathers, and it actually turned the ends a little bit green. That's not ideal, but you get the idea. So this one, again, is grizzly hackle, and so each of the barbs has little stripes on it. It gives it a little bit different look, but the idea is that you throw it and it sits on top of the water, and it stimulates the fish to bite. Maybe it looks like a caterpillar. It can imitate a lot of different things. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this fly off, and I'm going to do it. I'll always like to talk through these in case this is the first video that someone is watching and they're trying to learn the different steps. So just so you know, when you take the feather and tie it in and wrap it forward like that, it's called palmering. palmering the feather, palmering the hackle. I guess somebody named Palmer's the one that invented that. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a half hitch, and that means I'm going to go around. So this is not tied down to the feather yet, to the hook yet. I'm going to wrap this around my finger and go above the hook here. So it's making an X above the hook. I'm going to go down and touch the hook, put my finger down so it holds the thread there. Then I'm going to knock this thread off my finger so it falls down below the hook, but I'm going to hold it so it doesn't go over the feathers. And now I'm going to pull it tight, and you should see it come up underneath the eye of the hook right there. Now I've got a half hitch. I'm going to do it one more time. 2 half hitches. I want to make sure it doesn't, because if you just let go of that when you flip it off your finger, it can fall under here and grab the barbs and pull them forward to where they're sticking out. You don't want that on the hook. I'm going to take a couple of turns just to smooth it back over. And then I'm going to take one turn over my finger, under the hook, back over my finger, and to the left of the other loop. I'm going to pull it down here so I have a little bit to work with. I'm going to snip this off. So now my bobbin is disconnected. So now all I got to do is tie my my fly off. I'm going to stick my finger through this loop, lift up on the first string, grab the second string and pull it through. This is the tag end. You'll see that tag come through there. And I'm going to come back here and lay it down where it was. Then I'm going to reach in again, go over and grab that tag end again, pull it through the second time, put it back so I can hold it where it was. Then I'm going to grab my scissors or a pin or any sharp object or sharpish object that you can grab this with and take it off of your finger. You don't have to do it this way, but it sure makes it easier to guide it in. So then now I can pull it away like this. When I come in, ooh, almost lost it. When I come in, I can make sure that it goes down next to the barbs and not over the top of them. And then I release it there. I'll show you that one more time, because that was kind of funky the way that it went. Something went into the between the blades of the scissors there. So take out a little bit of that slack. One time under, over, or over, under, and back over the finger. I go through, pull this one through. I go through, pull this one through again. And then I'm going to take my pointed object, my scissors in this case. Now I've got it in control here, where I want it. And pull this down and lay it in right where I want it, right there. Let that snug down. Snip that off. Take my handy dandy fingernail polish. I really need to take this brush out and put a needle in there, because it makes it so much easier to put this stuff on with a needle. I don't think I have a needle handy. Oh, I do have a needle handy. Hang on. I had to hem something before, so I've got one laying right here. So this is better with like a hat pin or something like that, but I'm just going to get a drop there. Perfect. I got a drop of fingernail polish on the needle. I'm just going to touch there, and you can see that puts a little bit of a glaze on that. So, and then you're done with that. So here's the interesting thing about these flies. So in this case, all I did was tie that feather on and wrap it around and then tie it with string. Often when you use a feather and a fly, like if you're doing, well, I'll get an example. Here's a bunch of flies that I've tied on my videos. So this one, here's an example. This fly right here. Well, that's not a good example because it's not a feather. Okay, well, I've not done an example like that. Never mind. I'll just tell you. So, typically if you use a feather, you tie the feather around, you tie it off. But sometimes you can put a wire on there after you put the feather on, when you wrap the feather, then you can come over it with a wire too. That way, if this feather breaks, it doesn't come unwound when you're fishing with it. I've had that happen where I didn't use a wire, and that feather broke, and then it was just hanging off the back, all flopping around, and I ended up cutting it off, and then eventually I took that hook and cut all the stuff off of it and retied it, but because I didn't lose it. But sometimes these can be really tough, and sometimes they're not tough. And luckily they're a quick fly to tie. If I wasn't talking through this whole thing, I could have tied that in a minute and a half or so. Sometime I need to do a video where I just tie a fly without talking the whole time and show how quickly you can do it. But there are some flies out there that are that quick, and this is one of them. But it's a very handy fly. You can make it with some, you can take some of these barbs and tie them in so they stick out the back. Or you can use some deer tail to stick out the back. There's many different ways you can do that, but very handy fly. You can tie them, like I said, big or small. Again, I'm not really worried about the sizing of this. A lot of people, when they look at videos like this, they're like, oh, what size hook did you use? And they want to tie it exactly the way that they tied it, sizes and everything. But I can just show you that I like for the barbs to stick out past the hook. Let me get that out of the way. I like for the barbs to stick past the hook like that, so it conceals the hook. So whenever I tied this one, I picked barbs that stick past the hook. That's the way I like mine to be. If you like yours to be shorter, by all means pick a feather that has shorter barbs so that they meet maybe just with the point of the hook, or however you like to tie them. But I like to make these videos to show the steps. Regardless of how good the fly looks, it's still the right steps to make the fly. So, for the most part, and they've worked for me, and I've fly fished for 11 years now, 10 going on 11 this summer. So they work as long as you're not too picky about the kind of fish you're catching. Anyway, I'll stop yapping. Finish that fly off. So this is a I'll call it a spooky stimulator since it's orange and black and it's October. A spooky stimulator fly. So hope you liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. David, good to see you on here. I missed some other names that popped up there, but hope you're having a great night. Hope you enjoyed watching the video, and catch you on the next one. If you are interested in watching these kind of videos, I post them on YouTube after I make them on Facebook. So I get a lot of views on Facebook, but I don't see a bunch of people switching over and going to my YouTube channel and watching them. My YouTube channel, if you search Google or search on YouTube for QuietMan28, QuietMan28, you can see all my videos, and even one video of me singing opera. If you've never heard, that's no surprise to David because he's heard me. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Check them out. If you go to YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe, and post some comments so I can see that people are paying attention. So anyway, hope you liked it. Hope you try it out. If you do, post a comment. Thank you, and have a good night.